function would be a custodial supervisor, but I wanted to share some administrative responsibilities as well. Their shift would be a second shift, and I'll show you an organization chart of where the employees are, their shifts, and how that works, but this would be a sample set of what their required duties would look like. Basically supervising facility managers, custodians, looking at our cleaning methods, making that better, the different cleaning equipment, managing the staffing levels, of course supervising quality control and doing annual evaluations of the majority of those people, and those are just some of the sample duties. So to look at the org chart, and I know it's small, but I kind of color-coded it so you can see what's what. On the far left, there's 4 ground staff. In the dark red, they're general maintenance. The orangish is our skilled maintenance. Then there's an operations secretary. And then from that point to the right, the top line are facility managers. They're the daytime head custodian kind of people. Then you have the blue, it's a full-time custodian. Light blue is a part-time custodian. So you see 71 employees under the responsibility of operations. That's a lot to manage without mid-level supervision. If we were to add the mid-level supervisor, it would look something like this. It's the bright red in the middle. So they'd be on a second shift where most of the custodians are. And we have, number is 47 people on second and third shifts. So it's better served by having a second shift supervisor help out managing them, optimizing them, having eyes on them on a daily basis. That would leave 24 during the day. So there would be some overlap from this assistant director that would interface with the daytime facility managers. So I kind of split it left and right, but I would have overall jurisdiction over all of these people. I'd mainly interact with the day shift mostly, and there'd be some overlap with the assistant director, and he would really be there mainly for the second shift employees. Any questions so far? I'm close to the end.
It's just so easy to understand.
Good.
I answered my other question.
Good. I tried to make it easy to understand.
It really is.
So
Yeah, I just need a magnifying glass.
I tried to color code it.
I know, it's just, it's just a lot to try to fit in one thing.
Yeah.
And if you didn't fit it in one thing, it would be confusing too, so.
Right. It was tough to squeeze in. So then the big question is, how much money does this cost? And that's the next slide. So research of this, so I looked at the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. In 1819, they did a salary survey of all Bucks County schools, and the average supervisor salary for this type of position, average, is $86,462.58. So this is between custodial, supervisor, and assistant director. I tried to not err towards an assistant director, more towards custodial. That's really what I'm focused on, the majority of this person doing, with some other administrative functions. And another component of this, I looked at what is an average difference in salary from a supervisor to his direct report. Bucks County average of that, and I had to do the math on a lot of this. The average assistant or custodial supervisor made $27,000 more than his highest paid direct report. So my recommendation for this would be a salary range of $80,000 to $84,000, and this is all subjective. It's a recommendation. It's below the average, and again, to look at that, how much more does this person make than his highest paid subordinate? This number would represent about $20,000 over the highest paid subordinate. Questions?
The total cost to the district, though, this person would get benefits and.
Correct.
Plus bonus.
Plus fringe.
Right.
So what would that be?
I'll show it to you in the next one.
So is there anything I can clarify about that? I wanted to be as thorough and precise as I could with data. It's one of those ones we decided through attrition. I can't speak to how it happened or why it happened, but Tony Secreto decided to retire in December of 2015, and whatever the decision factor was, I'm sure it was attractive. Can we give someone a salary bump to try to take on these duties? It's just with the sheer number of people and that number of people on second and third shift, it really makes a lot of sense to have a person with them, especially like for events. When you have a big event at the auditorium or gym, they can be there to make sure everything's going right. Whether it's whatever it might be, they can be there to address that so that there's a full-time administrator type person on site and they can handle those things.
So two pieces to this. One is from a budget standpoint, Mr. Dahlberg has worked this recommendation into his budget presentation to get you a sense for, can we afford another administrator, right, in terms of what we're asking for. The second piece is, and I just want to reiterate what Mr. Harper said, in terms of the largest concern is the supervision of the people outside of the day shift. And so currently we are under supervising, which means we're under training, which means we are under supporting the 47 employees who don't work your normal 7 to 3 shift or whatever the day shift works, depending on what level they are. And that is a concern, both short-term and long-term, that we're looking to address with this position. I would suggest, because it is not a cheap recommendation, and because of the time, that I would suggest that we take some time to think about this. This is not something we have to act upon in March. And so to have an opportunity for the board to think through this and to interact with this, and then have another opportunity to ask any questions they might have, to go and wait for a month to be able to do that. Is that
Sure.
fair from a timing standpoint? Is that still appropriate in terms of being able to get somebody in place?
Right, I
If
feel like
it
I'm
were an approved position.
throwing
So,
this on the
yeah.
committee that they may not have been aware of, so obviously it's time to digest and think about the numbers that I put in front of you.
Okay? All right. Are there any questions about the job itself, though, that you need to
No,
clarify?
makes
Okay,
sense.
great. Thank you, Mr. Harper.
Well,
Right.
It's a very good presentation, thank you.
last one of the evening.
Oh. Just one best
So
one.
look at Snappy.
Two bottom line.
Giving one.
Come on. Don't let me look at the last page.
Is this a record for meeting duration?
No.
No.
Not
close.
even close. No, getting close.
Okay.
They're gonna ring that bell.
All right.
Tell us to get out.
Well,
All right.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. Danny actually has school starts 7:15 tomorrow morning.
I have to be here at 6:30 for the just children, which means I wake up at 4:30, leave at 5:30 to get there by 6:30.
Just buy a concept.
All right. All right, so first draft of the 1920 general fund budget. So this is the total general fund budget included. So this includes what Brian went through with you in detail and Kelly went through with you in detail. In the next 2 months, we'll have also the rest of the department budgets come in and go through those in detail, line item by line. So I'm not going to go into the weeds that far, line by line. I'm going to have more categorized and generalized spending to show you. Okay. So my goals for this budget presentation: review the budget calendar, give you some review of the revenue and expense history, remind you of the Act 1 index, tax rate, go through the 1920 revenue and expenditure budget information that we have to date, review the fund balance, go through some retirement costs with you, and define a path moving forward. I see this is not lining up real
Is
well.
that a PowerPoint or is that a
It's a
PDF?
PDF.
Scroll it that way.
What?
Oh, there you go.
All right, well, we'll get to that.
All right.
Okay, page 3, preliminary budget Act 1 timeline. Just to remind you that in October, you passed a resolution not to go above the index in the budget for any tax increase, and that index is 2.3%. Okay, so you've already taken care of that process. Budget timeline, the things you see with check marks, we've already completed. The things that you see skipped means that that was an Act 1 requirement, and since we passed the resolution, we don't have to do those things. Okay? Page 5, all these items we skipped. Page 6 is where we're at right now, March 12th, we're looking at the first budget. The next three items have to do again with Act 1. If we were going to submit referendums, questions to go above the index, would have the in March, and to seek voter approval, and if the voters did not approve that, then we would have to ask PDE. But again, we do not have to do those steps since we're not doing the Act 1 process. Next slide, again, just this is kind of the rest of the spring, how it kind of flows through April, looking at the budget again. May, the first budget vote, May 13th, and then June 17th would be the final vote. History of the general fund revenue and expenditures from 9/10 up through 17/18. These are the actual numbers. If you look at the total expenditure line, it increases 102 million to 131 million. Roughly $29 million of expenditure increase in that time frame. $17 million of that expenditure was mandated PSERS costs. So yes, the budgets have went up, but by a vast majority, they've been driven up by mandated costs. That's just PSERS. You also have all the mandates in special education and other areas that are out there that drive school district budgets. So there's very little room, for extra things other than what's mandated by the state for us to do. You also see then that we have been transferring funds to the capital project at the end of each year. The last 2 years, 4.9 million and 3.9 million went over to the capital projects fund, and that is what we are funding that 6-year plan with. Just a pretty chart, because I'm a budget geek and I want to see some colors. It's a chart. It's basically showing the same data of the revenues and expenditures comparison. Act 1 index. I'm on page 11 now. This is the Act 1 index tax rate impact. So for 16, 17, 17, 18, and 18, 19, we've been at 135.2555 mils to the median assessed property. That is a tax bill of $4,209 for our school real estate taxes. The Act 1 index will allow 2.3% tax increase. That equates to 3.1109 mils, which would allow for 138.3664 mil tax rate this year if the district raised taxes and wanted to raise taxes, or needed to raise taxes. That would take that median tax bill to $4,305, which is $96.81 increase to the median property. That would raise an additional $1.9 million in revenue for the district if needed. So now we get to the good stuff. Page 12 is the revenue to expenditure summary. I'm showing you 2 years of actual numbers plus the current year budget of 18-19 and the 19-20 proposed budget. At this point, our revenues and expenditures are equal at $141,513,253 without any need for a tax increase. We do not have a structural deficit at this point, and we do not need a tax increase.
Wait, can you just repeat that a lot
Yeah.
louder?
Say
That was like really important and
Rather-
it was like,
Rather loud.
just shout it really loud. Wake up all of Sue Furlong's viewers who just fell asleep.
Shout it from the rooftop.
No, they quit a long time ago.
It's a balanced budget.
It's a balanced budget.
But I can cue this so that it comes in right in here.
There you go.
There you go.
So on the expenditure side, that represents a 2.44% increase over current year budget. Revenue is a little higher because we had a deficit budget last year. As you can see, a $587,000 structural deficit last year. We've cleaned that up and balanced the budget for this year, or for 1920. So let me go through some of the detail with you.
So no taxes, no borrowing from fund balance, no structural deficit.
Correct.
Okay.
To sum up.
I'm sorry, what was
Awesome.
that? Could you say that one more time? I think I missed it.
Yeah, I think we like yelled a little bit.
Business.
Okay,
It's already late enough.
So, to repeat one more time, local revenue does not include Act 1 index. We are not included. Okay, so I'll show you the revenue summary, local revenue, state revenue, federal revenue. The local revenue is 75.23% of our total, 24.19% is state, and federal was at about 0.58%. We don't get a lot of federal money based on our economic status here. Again, the total revenues you can see there. Give you some local revenue summary detail. Real estate taxes, we have up $780,215, and that is based on increased assessed value year over year. The current Act 511 taxes, the biggest tax here is your earned income tax, where an increase of $728,000, and that's based on wage growth, 2.3% per year. Actually, wages are growing. I saw a report about 3%. Saw a report last week. I'm budgeting about 2.3%. The other line item that's increased significantly is our earnings on investment. Based on our current portfolio this year, I expect us to be about $1.8 million. So we budgeted that for next year. They're saying that they believe that interest rates are going to level off. So I'm not gonna build in anything higher than what our portfolio is going to generate this year. Okay. So total revenue, local revenue is up by 2.5 million. Next page, I'll just give you the detail of the assessed value. You can see that first line, our assessed value has been growing over the last few years. Our current number, 643 million, that is the assessed value used for the county and township tax bills that just came out this month. I would expect us to be a little bit higher till we get to our value in June when they give us the values. But I'm going to use what I have at this point for the budget process. Again, same tax millage rate, should the total gross, and then our collection rate will budget at 97%. If you look at last 2 years, we're 97.35 and 97.57. Current year we're at 96.88, but we're still collecting money, so that will most likely end up in the same ballpark as those 2 actual years. So I feel comfortable at 97%, and I think we still have a little bit of room there if we need it. So total real estate revenue just shy of $82 million. Okay, and I have taken into account the homestead farmstead in that amount there. So put the note at the bottom. Over to state revenue, 5 line items that are going up. Basic ed funding and special ed funding based on the governor's budget that he proposed earlier in February. Also, the sinking fund payments just based on the schedule of reimbursements based on our debt service payments. And then Social Security and retirement go up based on the increase in the rate for retirement, and also the increase in the salary drives the cost up, and the state reimburses us half of that. So we're looking at a $1.4 million increase in budgeted state revenues. Right? This next slide will just kind of give you an idea of what the governor did in his proposal. He has a $34.1 billion budget proposal. He's talking about $441 million for basic education. However, $166 million of that is new money, and $262 million is the current Ready to Learn block grant that he wants to reallocate into basic ed funding. So it's not truly a $441 million increase. He's doing the shuffle game with $262 million. There's a little piece there, $13.8 million, that he's proposed to bring every school, every teacher in the state up to a $45,000 minimum salary. That our professional organization, PASCO, is telling us that from a legislative standpoint, that's probably not going to happen. I left that little piece out of our numbers, and I just went with the what our increase is out of the $166 million new money. I left the block grant where it's at because until the legislature votes to change that, it's still going to be Ready to Learn block grant. So if they do change it, it's just simply us putting it in a different account code when we get it. Other things there, about halfway down the page, a $50 million increase in special ed funding. Pupil transportation is concerning. They've level funded that for 2 years now. The problem is that that is a statutory formula which drives money out to districts based on their actual cost of transportation. They haven't changed the formula or the law, the statute that drives that money out, but the governor's not funding it. So it is an issue that's going to have to come to an end ahead at some point at the governor or at the state level. Retirement, $160 million increase from the state side because again they have to give the districts half the cost, and an $11 million increase in Social Security, again giving the districts their share. And they're also talking about the school safety and security fund. Governor's talking about a $45 million pot again this year. There's a lot of talk about figuring out how to increase that at the state level. That will most likely be grant driven like it is this year. We received $25,000 this year, as did every other school district in the state, and then there's a competitive part that we apply for, and we haven't heard if we, if our grant will be funded or not. But it's if they do it on a socioeconomic basis like they do most things, we don't stand to have a very good shot at it. We're not holding our breath.
Don't hold your breath.
This is a little bit more detail about the state funding proposal that impacts us. The basic ed $538,000 increase. Ready to Learn, I'm holding that money in that line item instead of moving it. Special ed is about $129,000 increase for us. Okay. State property tax relief estimate. Last year we got just about 2.4 million in that. A number of homesteads and farmsteads are there on our exclusion amount, and that ended up being about $198 per property. Okay. Federal revenue, we budget the same thing every year. The amounts go up and down based on what our grant is and what we use of it. The rest of it carries to the next year. It's such a small amount of our budget. We routinely budget at the same level and then adjust accordingly. Okay, the next couple pages, when we go in and we start talking about our object codes, this is just a description of the object codes. I'm not going to sit here and read them, so if you want to know what the objects are that I'm talking about,
There they are.
Joe wants you to go line by line.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, object summaries. So this is our salary and benefits, purchase, professional services, and so forth. You can see we have the 2 years of actual, current year budget, and then the proposed budget for 1920. Where are we up? We're up in salaries, 1.3 million. Employee benefits, 1.6 million. We're down in professional services. A lot of that money was moved down to the 500 object as it moving around a little bit of money in the people services budget. Let's see, the 500 line item you can see is up. What's driving that line item up is tuition to charter schools, tuition to the tech school based on what you heard tonight, IU transportation, what Brian talked about, student placements, special education student placements at various schools. So those are the numbers that are driving that tuition, that 500 line item up. And like I said, a lot of that decrease in 300 was a movement of money to the 500, which is what we're spending. Okay?
Can I ask one quick question about that? I thought that our placements had gone, our out of district or out of school placements out of district placements had gone down. Is that not the case?
So from a number standpoint, they have over the past 3 years in terms of totals. But I can't speak to the value of them in terms of what they've cost in placements.
So just some are more costly specific.
Although
for
within
specific
that
situations.
one of the largest pieces, and something we'll need to talk about eventually, probably not tonight, is the charter school situation in terms of when we look at those numbers and the increase that's been over the last 3 years in terms of to the budget. That is a large portion of that, almost $1 million in terms of increases from that standpoint, as well as some of the transportation stuff, although that's comparatively minimal to the $1 million increase to that line.
Our 800 object interest is down, and then principal payments go up. They're roughly the same. As interest is going to go down, our principal payment will go up because our debt's level funded. So an average of $3.3 million increase in the expenditure side on an object basis. Okay. Salaries increase, 1.3 million. What makes that up? We have some proposed new positions on the next page or so that I'll go through with you. Increases in the contract for PEA and Act 93. Estimated increases for miscellaneous employees, and estimated increase for the ongoing PESPA negotiations. The next page is the requested new positions in the budget. There is one guidance counselor requested for the middle schools level based on student load and responsibilities for those counselors. There's one teaching assistant at the high school in the life skills program, and that's based on enrollment. There's a half a speech therapist position, and that is based on our enrollment in speech. We have a 0.5 cap roommate, and that is due to the program expansion of that cyber program in the cap room, and being able to service the kids that are in those programs. And then the last one is the Assistant Director of Operations that Kelly went through with you. I put a budget line item in here of $80,000 for salary, and cost of salary and benefits is about $134,000 total. Okay.
So will the guidance counselor float between all the middle schools?
Well, so what this will do is, if approved, this would increase to 5 counselors at the middle school level. And so we would then meet with the middle school principals and take a look at the enrollment and student need, and then develop a schedule. So obviously there would be some floating. It may not be this person in terms of the way that we end up allocating that. We would work with the principals and Dr. Weyer's office to develop that schedule for the new counselors. Caseload-wise, at the middle school level, that is our largest number in terms of where they're running caseloads. In terms of needs, middle school is also a needy time. One of the recommendations coming out of the audits and looking at our new guidance plan is in terms of counseling need at the middle school specifically. The teaching assistant is in our life skills. We are going up, I believe, 2 students in the life skills enrollment. And that's a very heavy staffing program in terms of the number of hands that are needed there. The speech therapist, we currently have a